Okay, hello. I'm making a video here on a corporate model, okay? And the first step here is I'm just going to make a presentation of some of the financial ratios. The frustrating part about a corporate model for me, and it really is coming up with it requires a lot of creativity, really, to come up with method for making assumptions. Now I'm using air freight company, and I've wasted incredible amounts of time. I put all this stuff in. For me, a very, very interesting case. It went bankrupt twice, not once. It's called Kitty Hawk. It bought a company much bigger than itself, so we're going to use it as a. I'm going to have a few videos describing exactly how to model the merger and go through some of the details in modeling the merger. But the real issue, uh, the issue I want to go through now is how do we make a forecast? Now, uh, uh, you know, I guess the first thing I did is start to I got put the balance sheet and income statement and cash flow together all the way from 1992 with some big holes to 1996. They restructured and had a bankruptcy in the year 2000, so it was a little tricky. And then they recapitalized and went to 2007 and finally ended. And you can kind of see really what happens in a bankruptcy because if you look at the cash flows here, uh, all the way to the bottom. I hardly ever do this, but if you look at the cash at the end of period here, they ran out of cash here, and they ran out of cash here again, and they tried to repay the debt. They couldn't do that, and they couldn't raise any new debt, and we'll kind of see why. Now, let's make a couple of financial ratios just at first. Now, I'm gonna just let's compute some credit ratios. I want to show you, maybe not, that the liquidity ratios, things like you know, the current assets to current liabilities, current ratio, quick ratio, kind of meaningless. The if let's accumulate all the debt, and if we want to accumulate all the debt, I could put a minus one here and call it net debt. But right now, I think let's just get the gross debts. So this current portion of leases is a debt, and I'm going to put one. Current debt is one. Revolving credit facility, that's debt. I think that's about it. Long-term debt here. Accrued maintenance reserves, no. Liabilities subject to compromise, those are all debt. So we have a bunch of categories of debt, and let's just put all the debt here. Okay. And for Tony, uh, uh, I promised a couple of other videos. I really got to get those done. Um, but let's, for now, I'm trying to, I hate this, but I'm trying to get a decent video on a corporate finance, and it's so much less structured really than project finance. It's kind of harder to make generalizations about this. So let's press the F4 button and Shift Control R. And now the reason Shift Control R works is I have the generic macros open, and you see how the debt skyrocketed here. It went up. They made this merger, and then they went bankrupt, and then they got rid of all their debt. But let's compare the debt to the EBITDA. Now, to compute the EBITDA, again, it's not straightforward calculation. I took the gross income, added depreciation and asset impairment and discontinued operations, or gains or losses from, and subtracted the admin costs to get really the cash. That's how I did this, and the total EBITDA eventually went negative. That's when they went bankrupt for the second time. I'm going to graph all of this. So let's put the debt to EBITDA. Now, this is, I hope this will be somewhat illuminating, because here's the, we'll take the debt first, and then divide that by the EBITDA. Duh, that's not very hard. And we have 2 times. Now, somebody could say, well, and maybe the video will be a little more instrumental. We could pay the debt off in 2 years of EBITDA, and this looks good. So they had all this debt. Now this is a little distorted because the debt came at the end of the year. Everything looked fine, and then they here, then they suddenly, the EBITDA went down, I guess. But for here, it didn't look that bad. It was totally kind of a difficult thing to predict. I'm not doing well here, but what happened to the EBITDA? The EBITDA this is after they kind of restructured, but just before, right before, everything looked just fine, and then the EBITDA went negative. So this didn't help. How about let's put debt to capital. Total capital is simply going to be the debt here plus the equity, and then we put the debt to capital. So yeah, I know some of you, I don't want to get into the silly argument about debt to equity or debt to capital. So here's the debt divided by the capital. Shift Control P to get it right. They started with 42%. So okay, they did go to 60% here. Oops. When they did the merger. That's interesting. And then they went to 70%. And then this is when they went bankrupt. I'm going to take these away. And maybe the third ratio would be the EBITDA to interest, or the EBIT to interest. Now, these ratios, when we compute this ratio, let's take the EBIT and divide it by the interest. Now, of course, I have to get the interest, so let's get that. Now, I wonder if I should. I was afraid these videos would really suck, but I'm gonna try this. Okay, and let's take the EBITDA to interest. Eight times, wonderful. Okay, and everything seemed fine. Look at this. It was 7 times. It seemed to be very high. Always seemed to be reasonable. So that didn't help us either. That didn't help us really predict the bankruptcy. Now we could do it after depreciation. So we take this and divide it by the interest. Again, a real high number. Okay. And I suppose that we had a real problem right in the year of the bankruptcy here. So finally, but it was certainly not an easy thing to predict. Now, all this, to me, shows us that we need to do something else other than compute a couple of financial ratios to figure out what's going to really happen. We have to make some kind of downside case. Otherwise, whoops. So I'm pressing control minus, shift spacebar, control minus. Now let's just graph all of this. Now one way to do this is press shift F11, get a new sheet, go to the let's copy, or how about cut better. So let's cut all of this. Okay. And put it right at the top. And when you cut it, you can copy it the next time and put Alt ES W for column width. And we're going to put the year here. Now, okay, excuse me. Shift control the little umlaut thing just to the left of the 1. And then so shift control R doesn't work on the very top one. Does it work on the second one? Yeah, it did. And I'm going to say that put this one as equal NA, so let's not graph the very last thing. And we want to just make a graph of any of these. Now I'm going to delete this row again. And we're just going to make a little code number. That's so easy. Now, this looks maybe too simple and too repetitive, but I'm going to do a couple of things that are slightly different. When we make our drop-down box, let's go to a different sheet. Let's click on this, and let's do everything. Click on a different sheet, and I hope now you see why I did this. We'll just click on the whole line. We'll be lazy, and the only problem with being lazy like that at all is that you have a little tiny thing at the top. But the good news with that is that you can, get all of this stuff, okay, and we can do it really quickly, and we can just then type index and let's see if we get a circular reference here. I don't think we do. And then just copy that across. Okay, so that worked just that quickly. And then let's put our year up here. Okay, I should have done let's press shift control R. Okay. And did I 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 2000, 2001? Okay. So then since we can just press the F11 button, and then we can get our graphs, and we can start to see really what happened over this long period of time. And let's the see if we can kind of just look at this. So we just copy this to the button, and just that quickly we can kind of look at all of our things. Now, if you want to you give a history of the company, we can easily do that. This is some of these things we didn't have. Now, instead of going through it one by one like this, you can very easily just put another spinner box right next to this and then copy that over. Okay. And we okay, and we'll go from 2 to line 56, it looks like. I'm just looking at the row number. Go back to it. Okay. Now we can copy this to the chart, and we can just work through it. Now, let's see if we can very quickly, while I stop this video, let's see if we can see anything here. So we push it up. The block hours went way down after the restructuring of the merger. That's not very interesting, but you know, they wanted to increase, and then they increased the okay, not very interesting. This is the flight revenue per hour, and it looks like the prices kind of went up and down, and the fuel expense is a percentage of revenue. This is telling you what really happened. This is the revenues minus this is how much revenue they're earning. They were just having really big planes here. So again, it's very, very difficult to just use these statistics. Okay, this is the revenue per pound. This is the EBITDA. That's the computed EBITDA. Now that's the most interesting one. How it went up and then came down, and then right next to it we put the how we computed the EBITDA. The depreciation way up. Okay. This is the admin expense. That's kind of interesting that they were increasing it, and then the total EBITDA. Now the capex, that was a real problem. They had to make capex for some maintenance of planes. And let's keep going. EBITDA to revenues, EBITDA per pound, invested capital. I think that's where it's getting a little more interesting. Then we have a blank one, EB tax rate. I put a tax rate applied. This is a no plat, so you can kind of see what's going to happen. And that's the return on invested capital was high here, and it started coming down, and then it came down and eventually went negative. If you would have, that's the real key to making the forecast, to understand what's really happening to the return on invested capital. If you look at you can look at the amount of capital they spent per hour of flight, and then you can compute adjusted return on invested capital, which is maybe that counts for the write-offs, and the fact when you write something off, the amount you invested didn't go down, even though your balance sheet goes down. So perhaps you should. I adjusted this for asset impairments and other write-offs for things like discontinued operations, and then you can see the return on invested capital really falling down. And then we have the equity. Now, when you compute the average equity and the return on equity, perhaps we should take out this negative one here, but that tells you a lot less. return. And then here's the debt to EBITDA we were looking at. Uh, okay, and the total capital, debt to capital, and interest, and the EBITDA, EBIT to interest. Okay, so that's how easy it is to make the graphs. And I think I'll save this one. Whoops.